Oh no, Othello.
Not if we don't want to be blacklisted by two big stars and a big star director.
Yeah. I'm sure they have producer, executive producer credits or something, whatever the
Well,
equivalent is.
one of the producers of the show, and now I don't want to name him, mostly just because I like the guy tremendously. Um, this is his first big financial success,
Hmm.
so I'm proud of him. Probably should name him, but I'm not going to. Uh, but
He could sponsor us, and we gladly name him.
Yeah, really, in a heartbeat. Sponsored by Othello, the big financial hit on Broadway.
Yeah. Yeah, we love our sponsorship. We still can't afford the tickets. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnell Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And let's get down to business. So we had two topics that we want to sort of bounce off, and we will talk about Othello. And but before we get there, we want to talk.
Let's be clear. Othello, starring Denzel Washington and Jake Gyllenhaal, directed by Kenny Leon. That's what is really the draw. Othello is a sidebar.
Yeah, I prefer to say Denzel Washington and Jake Jellystone.
Oh,
Jake Jellystone.
Is that the Simpson version?
No, it's Gyllenhaal. It just sounds like Jellystone.
Okay. I'm sure we've lost their sponsorship right now. Because
the old folks. No. We would very much welcome your sponsorship. Just send it on over. We'll be fine. So we will talk about Othello, the smash hit on Broadway right now, starring Denzel Washington and Jake Gyllenhaal, directed by Kenny Leon. But before that, we're gonna ask the age-old question that every nonprofit theater is asking right now, and has sort of an answer in every curtain speech. And the question is, how do we get people to the theater?
And let me start with, because you emailed me earlier this week, and I thought the question was, or your situation was an answer to itself. You said, why does it feel like theaters are desperately trying to get people who don't want to go to theater to go to theater?
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this before. There really ought to be enough of an audience from people who already love theater, want to bring their children and their nephews and their friends to see it, without us having to convince somebody who just comes home exhausted from work, can't keep their eyes open, and is then going to be thrown into Shakespeare or even a musical when they hate musicals. Just leave them alone.
That should be enough.
And by the way, there are examples such as...
Totally dismissed my Hamilton reference there.
I was going to say, no, I'm going right for Hamilton based on that.
Okay, I should have waited. I should wait for it.
That's right.
Wait for it.
That's right. I had to get my thought together because you threw it in there.
We're going to be puntastic today. I hope you're all ready.
Hamilton when things become an event, and everyone across the board is saying it's special.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's what really brings a new audience in. And interestingly enough, from statistics and experience, they not only go to the big event, they go to other shows around it because they've been attracted to the theater in general. So if they can't get into Hamilton on a Thursday, they'll go to something else that Thursday, which helps the other shows. And then they'll still go to Hamilton when they can get in.
Mm.
It happened with a Chorus Line. Chorus Line single-handedly kept other shows alive because you couldn't get into a Chorus Line.
So you go to something else.
You go to something else because that's the night you're in New York.
Yeah.
Right? So
that's very unique to New York too. I mean, we have a lot of options, but it's like, I think people would just opt to do nothing over
mhm.
choosing something else,
Yeah, you
which
just
is
go to dinner, you
interesting.
go home. Well, when I was living in Los Angeles, one of my big frustrations, and I'm sure this is across most of the world, um, my big frustration was somebody would say, "Why don't we go out tonight after work?" That's
Mhm.
great. So we would go to dinner, and I'd say, "Okay, are we going to a movie now? Should we see a show, or are we going to go to a show and then we'll go out afterward?" And they'll say, "Oh no, I do one thing a night, then you have to go home." Huh? It's like, so it's dinner and going home, or the theater and going home, or a movie and going home. And of course, in New York, you combine things. You just go as long as you can.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of going to more than one show in a day. And I not that doesn't mean I haven't done it. I have done it. There's a mindset during a fringe festival that it's different. Like you do want to. It's sort of like you're just trying to see how many you can get in.
Okay. Yeah.
But normally it's just because I know, like I always have to preface, I'm an odd bird. Okay, so most of my nights in a week are in a theater. And so I would prefer to spread it out instead of trying to cram it all into a
Yeah.
day or a weekend or something.
But you are in a different boat than most
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
But my point though wasn't so much that you've seen more than one show.
Mhm.
They weren't willing to do more than one activity.
Yeah,
So,
they're burned out after
but can't you have dinner and a show?
that.
They were not willing.
I think if it's planned, you can, but if it's the way I think it is, I mean, and the way I've observed it, is that friends get together and the only plan was the show. And so afterwards, they're all juiced up because of the show. It was so great. They're talking and chatting. Now they want to figure out where to go so they can continue talking.
Correct.
And that part isn't planned. And so it becomes frustrating when there's a lot of people trying to figure out where to go.
Well, even if it's two people in Los Angeles, you first have to figure out what's open
And
and
who's
how do we
driving?
and who's driving. In New York, you walk down the block, it's right there.
That's very true. I mean, we have definitely left the theater together and gone over to like Carnegie or,
Hmm. Yeah,
Galaxy or any of the
right.
diners. Yeah, I think it's interesting, but I think it has a lot to do with with the pandemic, post-pandemic. Like
I think we are definitely still in a. Although
but it
Broadway is obviously is changed, but I
yes.
think no, I don't think the rest of the theater community has come out.
But I don't think it's fear though. I think it's fatigue. I think we're just tired of doing this. Like we didn't realize how fast we were moving before until we got a chance to slow down, which was sort of involuntary. Everybody was forced to slow down. And
Hmm.
then once you slow down, you're like, you know what? I like this pace. And I
So
don't think I want to return to that rat race.
so how does that translate to getting an audience to see theater at all? And let me. We
Yeah.
need to stop. Forgive me. We need to stop talking about Broadway because it is
Mhm.
the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Right. Right. People for some reason are spending fortunes to see
Yeah.
theater when they come in from out of town as tourists.
Well,
But that's not going to happen with most regional theaters.
yeah. So what I would say is for one, we took advantage of the fact that there was so much theater before that, you know, people could just people could just really decide at short notice and go. And now I feel like it we don't in every area we don't have this mindset that we have a neighborhood theater. So for instance, Theater Exile is in South Philadelphia,
Mhm.
and I don't know or I don't believe that South Philadelphia understands that Theater Exile is the only theater in South Philadelphia.
Well,
And I
you and I
don't.
have had this discussion.
Yes,
Your community doesn't think of you as their theater
exactly.
because
And
you haven't marketed to them that way.
well, let's not throw Theater Exile under the bus.
No, 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 no.
I'm
But
what I'm saying in general is that I just take Theater Exile, the name, out of it, but just say random nonprofit in your neighborhood. Like, there isn't a mindset that the neighborhood supports that nonprofit, whether it's a community center or or something else. Like, the thing about a community center is that there's a service in there they provide that you need, and so you go
mhm.
in there. But for the theater, for most people, the mindset of a theater is still an entertainment venue. It's an entertainment venue. We're looking at it as a place to have a conversation, a place to make sense of the world as it's happening. And I don't know that the common person, just the everyday person, looks at it like that. I'm going to go in there to get some answers.
I'm going to disagree with you. Not that there aren't people in the category that you are talking about, quote, whatever this common person is, but I get what you're saying, and I know people just like that. But I also know of a lot of people who I do not consider to be theater insiders,
Mhm.
who see the theater as an enrichment of their lives, and they go for that reason. What they're looking for is, will this activity, can I assume that if I go to this show or that show, that there will be some enrichment to my life
Yeah.
as well as entertainment? And they're trying to figure this out with a poster with
Mhm.
no information, and not sure if they should put their money, since theater is not a $20 movie ticket.
Mhm.
In most cases, there are some, but most, they're trying to figure out whether or not, after a hard day's work, that they are going to, one, be able to stay awake and walk away feeling that was worth me spending an evening. And I agree with you that before the pandemic, there was just a world of choices, and people were running around. Now we have less theaters. So many of them have closed.
Mm.
And the ones that are left, God bless them, right? I have nothing, happy to have them. But I'm not sure if they're not just holding on for dear life, trying to figure out how they bring an audience in. And there are some people that'll go to anything called theater in their neighborhood, but that's not enough to keep it afloat. And just a historical, now I'm going to go back to Broadway. Up until Disney entering the market, right, when they came in with Beauty and the Beast, that was in the mid 90s, 1990s. Prior to that, Broadway was sustained by people who lived in the New York tri-state area. It did not rely on tourism. So we generally understood that the New York area could keep a show running for 3 months. If you wanted to run longer, then you had to attract a tourist audience,
Mhm.
a la Sound of Music, My Fair Lady. And therefore you could run longer. But the shows were budgeted to break even in less than a year. Now it's a minimum of 5 years with a large audience for them to break even. We have outpriced ourselves, and most of the blame goes to Disney. And don't get me wrong, Disney has its audience. But this is true historical statistics that we talked about along the way. So now, Othello can get, I don't want to transfer over to the discussion of the show yet, but that can get a tourist audience because of the star power.
Yeah.
But then you have shows that have no star power, and they have got to get the word out. But for the most part, a big long run in the 1950s and 60s only ran a year and a half. Then all of a sudden we ended up with Cats, A Chorus Line, 42nd Street. All these shows ran for 10 years, 20 years. And that was a brand new thing. So everything started to change. So now it comes down to the little regional theater. You have a 6 to 8 week run at best, sometimes 4 week. So by the time the word gets out to let them know what the show is about and if it's worth seeing, the show's almost closed. That to me is a problem. And I think that's the core, that if I could know a small theater company in my neighborhood has a show that feels like Hamilton, that it just has that spark that's going to excite me, but I don't hear about it for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Then there are only 2 weeks left, and I don't have in my schedule the right night in those 2 weeks to get in. I'm going to miss it. Therefore, you haven't got me.
And that's what's different in regional theater, because everyone is not everyone may not be clamoring to pull whatever just left New York into their theater.
Oh no,
And
I didn't
so-
mean literally Hamilton.
Oh
I
no,
meant,
no.
yeah.
I'm just saying, because there is a level of theater company that is doing that because they have the ability to bring that show to a regional market who may have missed it in New York. And so there's value in that. But there's also the smaller theater company who's up and coming, who wants to produce new work, who's trying to shine a light on conversations that they believe are urgent and are calling a community. And so like when you to reach them, it's not just here's my great advertising for this show. In that case, you do need to learn more about the company itself to be invested in what they're trying to do.
Well,
And so that's the part that's tricky, because we do end up focusing on the element of this show that's going to make it sellable. Let's just lead with that. And we kind of not hide, but we just sort of leave out who we are. And so people do come, they come and see the show, but they might not come back because they don't know the company. They just know the show that had been produced, and that they will come see it.
You're right, but one doesn't discount the other.
Mhm.
Both of them, it seems to me, have to happen together.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying like you shouldn't
Right.
promote the show. I'm saying the thing that we also need to do is make clear why they need to come here. Like, so for example, I wanted to talk about sports for a second, because I think sports have this interesting thing. It's an event whether you are at the stadium or in front of your television, because or you're at a bar, it's always an event. And it's because the fans know so much about the team. It doesn't matter how they perform.
But I'm sorry to stop you, but there is no team in shows that are different.
No, I know that.
Different. So then how do you create that?
I'm just pointing out the fact that whether you are live in person or, hanging with friends or at a bar, you're congregating with people. There are so many other ways to receive a game, a sporting event,
Right.
than there are in the theater. So here you have to be live, you have to be quiet. There's this unspoken theater etiquette that no one is educated on, but they need to know that. So somebody who's not an everyday or consistent theater goer doesn't understand this theater etiquette. And that's ultimately where my conversation came about. Like, how do you get people into theater? Because what I've been seeing is I don't always go to opening night. But when you go to opening night, it's like sponsors, donors, patrons, subscribers, and friends of the theater. These people came to see this show. They're excited for it. But like, if you go to another show where, let's say you're in a college class and your professor required you to come to this class for some sort of required credit or maybe extra credit. Either way, it's a job. And it's not, hey, here's several shows. Which one do you think would be cool to go see? They're going because they have to. And so the mindset is that they don't want to be here, or they don't know how long this show is. Like, and then when they realize how long the show is, they get antsy, they get fidgety, the phones come out and things. So it's like, I'm seeing that group of patrons who are here for some other reason than actually wanting to be here.
Right.
And so that's the part that's tricky, because you might send somebody who isn't fully invested in going to this show, and they might tap into something and be pleasantly surprised. But I think young adults are definitely distracted by social media whenever they feel anxious, whenever they feel vulnerable. And so when you're in a space where you don't know anything, you don't know anyone, you're not sure quite how to act in this space, and this story's not resonating with you yet, you retreat to the thing you do when you're in a crowd and you feel left out, or you feel like an odd person out. You just retreat to your phone.
One thing that there was one theater company that tried something number of years ago that I thought actually was kind of clever. I'm not sure they did it the right way, and there's no way to know how effective. But they had a student group, most of which had never been to the theater. It was a special matinee, and this is not Broadway. This was a regional theater. And what they did at the beginning is they brought out the cast. So instead of having the talk back after the show, where they get to ask, well, how did you become an actor and what's this about? They did it up front so that the kids got to see the actors as human with their careers in front of them and ask, what's this show about? So in advance, they had a little bit of knowledge. So when the show started, they kind of knew what was going to happen. Yeah. It's sort of, if you watch a TV show every week, you already know the characters.
Yeah.
So that was the idea. And I thought that was a smart idea. I think most audiences might, except for it depends on the audience, obviously.
That works well. It works well with children's theater too.
I think so.
I know a lot of companies who will do a talk back after every show, and that's always good for the audience too, because there's kids raising their hand, and you're like, wow, I can't believe that kid asked that question. And then the responses, and they show you like the practical magic of the show and everything, and so the kids are really engaged because they had a chance to ask the question the way they wanted to. So right. I do like.
But that's if it's after the show, you've lost the opportunity.
But what works about it for children's theater is it's right after the curtain call. It's not, we're going to go have a seat. We're going to go get out of these costumes, and then in 5 minutes we'll come and engage. They engage right away. Hello.
Right. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Like, what did you think of the show? And then everybody's clapping, and it was like, so we want to take this time to answer any questions you might have. No, every question is a good question. So raise your hand. Who wants? And they're already ready.
Right. But Darnell, I would still argue I like the idea of, especially for children, I like the idea of doing it up front, because just as you do a curtain speech up front, when you come out and welcome the audience in regional theater, and I've worked in many regional theaters that do that, that's a welcome. You're here. We see you in the audience. You're not just someone who bought a ticket and is now going to be in the dark looking at a plotted show with characters in it. We recognize you in the audience, and you're about to see something, and this is who we are. I think that works. I think the audience responds to that when they feel it, which is why I think so many regional theaters do it. I think the attempt is to make people feel part of the community and part of the team. But how far can we take that might bring them back if they know that there's some reason, and also maybe even like the show they're about to see better if they get to meet somebody, the director talking about the show, rather than just saying, hi, I hope you like the show, right? I'm wondering, I have no evidence one way or the other because I haven't seen it done in full. Like I said, I only heard that that they did this with a children's matinee, but it was an adult show.
Yeah.
I do want to bring up,
but that's also engaging them once they're there. It still doesn't solve the problem getting them there.
Right. And that's why I wanted to start with, and I apologize for going negative first. But one of it,
negative first?
Me, the curmudgeon, that there was a theater company, not one that I worked with, but I was in a roundtable with this theater company.
Mhm.
They were working on. I think I told this story. I don't know, last year on on the podcast. Um, they were working on a show called Beyond Therapy.
Mm.
It's a comedy, or a would be comedy, about a psychiatrist. So their thought was, ooh, let's direct mail. This is pre-internet. Okay. Let's direct mail to everybody in the tri-state area of New York City who works as a therapist and invite them at a discount to see the show. No one came. And the explanation was, and they had done this research. This is what they were explaining.
Yeah.
They finished their job. They're exhausted. They're tired of listening to all these problems. It's not funny to see your job again with somebody who isn't insightful about your job. It's just trying to do a comedy. So they weren't even interested in showing up. And that's what in those days we called spinning your wheels. You spend all this effort writing the perfect direct mail, making sure you get the mailing list that's exactly to all the right therapists, and it's a complete waste of time and energy. So the point that being is, who should we be targeting? And as we've talked about, and I want to present this to you as my theory, I think we target the theater going audience, the people who already come, and the others have to be dragged in by them. Period. We don't even, that doesn't mean you don't put a TV commercial on if you can afford it. But that's usually if you have Jake Gyllenhaal and Denzel, you let people know you have stars.
That is interesting, because I do think that that's why we're having a hard time. So, like, for example, if your company consistently brings in 1,200 people, perhaps that is your audience, 1,200 people. But there's always a goal for more, and because of that, that's when it gets sort of murky. It's like these people already want to be here with you, and so it's just like if somebody's a member of a club, right? The way to get more members is through the club members.
That's right. You let them bring their friends, family, and neighbors and say, I saw this great show. In fact, I want to go back and see it again and take you with me.
Yeah, or they come to some kind of open house and everybody talks about how great it is to be a member. Here's all the things we get to do, and that's why we're inviting you to this thing. It actually is an argument for theater memberships.
Yeah, although
I mean, it is a conversation that's going on.
The Woody Allen line, I don't want to belong to a club that would have
me as a member.
Yeah. So there's an element to that, but it still makes more sense than what I see theaters doing.
In general, the way I think about it, so for instance, here in the greater Philadelphia area, I've become a member of Longwood Gardens. Longwood Gardens, it's the old DuPont property in Kennett Square, and they have beautiful landscape out there. It's just wonderful. But like, to be a member, as opposed to being just a regular patron who's going there once a year, or maybe, like, you do feel a sense of connection to the organization because you're a member. And what we noticed is that Longwood Gardens does performances, right? They have performance spaces throughout the grounds, and I'm not fully aware of them when I'm just buying a ticket. I'm aware of them now because I'm a member. And so because I was a member, I was like, what else does my membership give me? And so I took advantage of it. And so now we have two sets of tickets for two shows that are being presented over the summer. And now we're going to be at Longwood Gardens more times than we had ever been there, simply because we're members. Every month there's a member appreciation day, and it's on our radar. We haven't been there yet, but we're constantly looking at, is the weather good? Should we go? Or are we free? This is something we can do. So it's always sitting there as an option. And so that's kind of cool. And I think about the other places I'm a member, like AMC theaters, Landmark theaters. I'm a member at those places, and so we just think about what do they have to offer us because
But
we're
here's
members.
right, and that's wonderful. But you're also talking to somebody because I work in the theater.
Mhm.
I have almost never been a member or a subscriber because I never know when I'm going to be available, and I'm willing to take the chance that I can't get in.
Very true.
And so you were two different people, both interested in the theater, and both have a different audience, but both of them lead to the same thing.
Well, that's the thing about a subscription that's different from a membership.
Yes.
The subscription says you're going to these 3 shows. You just have to decide which day you want to go, and it's still limited. But when you're a member and you just have access to everything they're doing, you can decide. You're not required to go to every single one of these. You can
Mhm.
just decide to go. But whether you go or not, you're still a member. And so
Mhm.
I don't
But
know
does
that
it
this is
cost? But membership costs money.
membership does cost money, yes, but I mean, what it says is that it unlocks a discount or some sort of incentive that you can't get as an everyday
Right.
ticket buyer. And
I think
so,
it's a
yeah,
very valid and interesting thing to be offered to people who care.
yeah.
I mean, again, my problem in New York, there are memberships to every museum, every theater company, and there are subscriptions to the theater companies.
Mhm.
I wouldn't sleep, eat, or bathe if I took everything I've been offered. So
Well,
basically,
you yeah.
I stay away from it all,
Well, you
and I
can't go to all of them, but there's 8 million people in New York.
yeah, but most of them, like I said,
I
22%.
know we know that, but the thing is, like, one
Only
company
22% want to be even go to a piece of theater.
but one company is not gonna look and say, "There's 2 other companies who have memberships, so let's not do one." They're thinking
No,
about what do they have that they can uniquely offer, and it might just be something like, a lot of people value sitting down and talking to the artist, and so perhaps that is something that they can offer. I don't know what the full answer is. I'm just saying, like, when
yeah,
you're a member, even at a museum, for example, here, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, if you're a member, you feel so connected to the collection. You feel connected to everything they have to offer, and you start thinking about, like, are there other reasons for me to go? Yeah, they have these Fridays where it's free to go, but then they have all these other events. So even when it's free, you're still treated like a member. There's
got
still
it.
something
But
different
it
that
still comes down to people who already want to go. And that's the with our discussion, I think that's the important thing. The membership is an interesting thing, but it's not going to make the person who came home from the construction job and has 3 kids at home decide they're going to become a member or go to your theater.
oh no, this is about engaging the people who are already here.
Thank you. That's the part I
Yes. Oh,
wanted to
yes.
make clear.
Oh, because earlier I said if your organization only has 1,200 people that come to support you, then perhaps that's it. And
Then
perhaps
treat them right and give them extra. And
exactly
that's it.
because once you start doing that, the word will spread,
Right.
I think.
Yeah, no,
I
I
just
agree.
yeah, I just feel like if it's it is something to think about because it's not something we do right now. We do have a lot of things to offer at a theater, like, but if you don't have children, do you really care about children's theater? Do you really care about the summer camp that this theater has when they produce shows that the kids can't even come
Right.
to?
Mhm.
Like, so what is making their summer camp enticing? Actually, in that instance, it only makes sense to have a summer camp if it's running when a show is running because your parents could be in the theater while the kids are at camp, but they're not
But
going to be there all day like that.
okay, now the other part of the discussion of how to get the audience in is and you brought this up uh, more than a dozen times over the past years. What makes your theater, what gives your theater its personality that is different than the guy 12 blocks away from you? Why
Mm.
do they come to your theater other than there's one particular show they want to see because they heard about it? And so, again, one thing you brought up, if you're the community's theater, if you something that handles your community and says we're part of you and you're part of us, and we're going to give you special events, and this is a neighborhood place, that's one thing.
Mhm.
If you only do family oriented shows, that gives you your uniqueness. If you bring in shows that have been on Broadway recently, that's your thing. That each show, each theater can attract their own version of the audience based on what they decide to produce
Yeah.
or to present. And a lot of, look, if you're in the middle of Indiana and there isn't a theater within 100 miles of you, then basically you can do different things every 4 weeks,
Mhm.
or right. And there's something, if people are interested in theater, they'll come.
Yeah.
But for the most part, when we are in a city and there are multiple choices, it's hard to do when you're an artistic director and you're trying to look for good work to do. But people need to know who you are, and sometimes it takes a while. You may not know yourself. You may not be able to find the appropriate plays. But we're talking about, how do you get someone in the seats? And part of that is, if people know, okay, I've got two kids who are 9 and 10 years old, I want to bring them with me, then that's going to be a theater that they can feel safe that they're bringing you to a family-oriented theater company. They're not going to take the chance of bringing you to something that may have a sexual content that they're not willing to go. But
Yeah.
that's a very small audience that cares about that.
Mhm.
So, but each theater has its own thing to worry about, because again, once you worry about trying to get the general audience in there and enlarge your 1,200 base audience to double that, you're in trouble. You shouldn't bother. And I think that is my proposal, that that's spinning our wheels. That's sending out the direct mail saying, we do the best theater in the world and you should give us your money and you better not miss us. And I'm not telling you anything about what we're doing that should make you want to leave work to come to see us.
I feel
Right?
like when you have brick and mortar, when you have a facility, that you have to do more than just produce a season.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be reasons to come in and occupy this building. And so I do kind of feel like that the facility needs to diversify itself. Like, it might make sense to, there's a coffee shop here, there's a, we produce, there's a specific that we produce in our season lineup, but we also offer our space to other artists, other creative um, people who are bringing their work into our space, and all that like gives people more reasons to come into the building. And I think everybody has to think more intently about, if you really want the community to come here, you have to find times for the community to easily come here for something that they don't have to do anything but just show up. And it's like, hey, we're doing this like, I don't know, an open house or something like that, where people can come in and find out about us.
Yeah.
There's going to be refreshments. We're going to do a small performance and it's all free. Here's the thing. It's just an opportunity. We want you to know who we are. We want you to ask questions about us. And, we also want you to give us suggestions. What would you like to see in this space? And, those are the kind of things that might help.
And yet, I would dare say that, at least in my awareness, I can think of 2 theater companies out of 50 that I am aware of in some detail
Mm-hmm.
that do anything like you're talking about.
Hmm.
What's wrong with us? We're sitting there wasting precious energy trying to get an audience in, and we have something to offer, but the people in charge don't seem to have learned this. I don't. It's very frustrating as
I think
somebody
I think I
who.
know. I think I have an idea of what it is.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's say you have a team of 10. They all
Hmm.
have they all have job titles. That title may assume that they do more than one role,
Hmm.
and an open house isn't something you already have on your plan.
Well,
It's
but you have someone who does events and development that everybody
true.
does.
That's very true, but often these things call on more people, and those people are already taxed. And
Well,
I think it has to do with the fact that we are lean organizations now. Like even the ones who have a lot of people, and I know we've sat in this studio talking about how the money needs to go towards the artists and not to pad the administration. But the thing is, like, we are running a building, and so even though we do have to prioritize the art that we're doing, we are running a facility. And so the facility needs that necessary support. And some of that support isn't directly for the subscription season.
yeah, but Darnell, the one thing to be careful of is not to use that as an excuse for not doing the things that your theater company should be doing.
I'm saying
And
if you have a team that is not adequately compensated, and they get
I,
off of work at whatever time they get off of. Anything else is extra. I'm telling you, I've experienced this at many
I,
organizations.
I'm not arguing that it doesn't exist. What I'm
Mhm,
arguing is, and now I'm very lucky to have said when I worked at the New York Shakespeare Festival Public Theater,
mhm.
when we had an opening night in the lobby, because we had 6 theaters off Broadway, theaters running on Broadway. We had free Shakespeare in Central Park. We had a jazz program, a film program. So much was going on. And my job ended at 6 p.m. And even though I know it was a different era, I was making $350 a week. At 6 o'clock, you could not get me to leave if we were going to have an event that night. I wanted to be there. And
Mm.
no one said I could leave anytime I wanted, anytime. It was so exciting. It wasn't, oh, and now we have donors who are giving us $1,000 each. This is an opening night party. We're doing it dirt cheap, but there are going to be so many exciting people in the lobby. The cast will be there. We're just going to have a great time, and we're going to feel what we've been working on. So even though I can't be at the show every night, I can feel a part of what I worked on.
Mhm.
This is part of why I want to be there. And that is a leadership thing. How do you, that's not fair to say. I don't want to put it on the person necessarily,
Mm.
but we do know that there are really obnoxious leaders, a la our president, who just make people not want to work
Let,
for them.
let me ask you this. At that time, when your work ended at 6, but you didn't leave, were you in a relationship?
I was there for 9 years. So some of it, yes, some of it, no.
Yeah. The reason I ask that is because now there is a huge focus on a work-life balance.
Hmm.
Whether it is justified or not, I think there's a lot of people who are just like, you know what? I gave you my time, and now I'm going to going home.
Like I
And
said, it was an option. No one ever
yeah.
said to me,
Mhm.
and not everyone I worked with stayed,
Yeah.
but I'm saying, but there will be some people. And if you say to them, part of your job right up front
Mhm.
is you're doing marketing, but when we have special events,
Yeah,
you're also part of that. And
you're
that
on the
becomes
event
part
team.
of the job.
Oh, absolutely. If the people are allocated to do that.
Yeah.
But I think what the struggle is that we are lean organizations and there aren't enough people to actually do these things. If you are the
Well,
director of your marketing department and you're also the only employee in your marketing department, the thought of having an event like every 5 minutes is overwhelming for you because you're spending the whole workday marketing the organization, the season, this particular show, and then you have to stay after several days out of the week
But
as well.
again, it's not an argument. But
Oh yeah,
my
this is
argument
all
is,
rhetorical. I'm not
yeah,
saying
I
we're
know.
not even saying no. I'm saying what you're
My
saying is
argument is priorities. That
absolutely.
if you tell the marketing person, you know what, come in at noon or come in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon
Mhm.
because we're going to be working that night, as long as there's one night a week, one night every 4 weeks, whatever is set up,
Yeah.
you sit down with that person, getting their insight and their input,
Mhm.
and you say, this is part of marketing. We've got to keep our theater exciting and alive
Yeah.
for the audience. This is not, we're not here for us. We are creating something that should enrich the lives of an audience, but we got to get an audience.
Mhm.
So part of this is I need a game plan, a massive, which has to change over time. And you try things, and if they don't work, you go to something else. And sometimes an employee doesn't work, and you go to someone else.
Yeah.
But and don't get me wrong, I've worked for the tiniest theaters. Got it. Or you can't work day and night. But then my question is, how do you move from where you are to the level you want to be
Mhm.
if you're not giving up some of yourself? And the question would be, is it, what does a theater company do for you
Mhm.
that makes that worthwhile? If there's nothing, then you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I
fe
got something from staying at the public theater.
I
It
also
led to so many things for me.
feel like that might be missing, uh, from all of our organizations.
I think so.
That passion you described is what most theater people embodied, when they entered into this space. But I do think, like, and maybe not just the other side of the pandemic, but I do think now, and these younger generations are really thinking about a balance, and because they have different priorities now. It's like it's different if you have a full-time job somewhere and you are paying to keep, you're paying a mortgage and you've got a car payment and you got a family either on the way or just it's in place. you know there's a part of you that says I've got to give this my all to keep all that afloat.
Right.
But
Right.
if you don't have all those things and you do have some flexibility, you're like, oh no, I get paid time off. I'm taking that time, and I'm going on vacation. I'm doing this and blah blah blah. And like, there is a mindset there, and I think that that's the part of this conversation that has changed. What you're saying is absolutely 100% like ideal, but the landscape has changed.
On the other hand, and different folk, different strokes, different folks,
Mhm.
right? That what you're looking for when you hire is somebody, and often they're young and they're just starting out, somebody with that passion who, for at least a period of time, want to give their all if it's appreciated.
Yeah.
And that means the people at the top, their job is to find a way to appreciate. And the people who are coming in, you're giving them the experience to make them excited about their lives. We go into the theater, this is not working for Mobile Oil. And I think one of the problems after the pandemic and with the younger generations, and believe me, I thought in many cases I was asked to work way too much and it affected my life, and I am in favor of a better work-life balance. I would never require somebody to work past the hours that has been assigned. But we work in the theater, and the theater now goes into the evening, which is most people's
Mhm.
free time.
Yeah.
So if you're an actor, all of a sudden you're working in the evening. What am I supposed to say? You can't go home to you have to go home to your kids in the evening? No, you became an actor. You're in a show. That is not, there's no excuse for that. That's what you decided to do. And my argument is, in the theater, you can come in and say, and by the way, I've done this, and other people on the older end have done this. I'm not coming in until noon or 1 o'clock because I have to work until 10 at night.
Mhm.
And no one, including the old curmudgeon producers, argued.
Yeah.
right? But you had to stand up for yourself, because if not, they'll say, hey, come in at 10 and work until 10. And no one's going to say, oh, you shouldn't have done that, because they're happy you're there. But bottom line is, and sometimes I even yelled at my bosses, you are asking too much of me. And they backed down because it got that way. Because we're all just trying to put on a show that we're proud of. And the pride is the thing that makes it worthwhile. And then we grow up. And when you get to a certain level and you have that home relationship, or you have a family or whatever, your priorities change. There's no question. So should, therefore, your job requirements. But to start with, how do we learn everything that we need to learn in the theater? You don't learn it in school. You learn it on the job. So the question is, not that you shouldn't be able to go home, but I'm going to give you the best example. When I was working for Disney in Los Angeles, they shut down the office at 6 p.m. I mean, lights off, because the vice president didn't want to work past 6 o'clock. And he made all of us leave. I'm going, we have a show down, a few blocks from here. We're supposed to go home? Okay. So I got in my car. I went back to my beachfront home in LA, and I walked around the marina going, shouldn't I be doing something? Right? I was by myself at that point. I did not have family. I was new out there. But I didn't even have work friends to go out with, because everyone went home.
Yeah.
There's a balance. You have to talk to your employees. What can I get? What would excite you? Right? And how do I...
more money.
Well, and we know that doesn't happen.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Like, they're not adequately compensated, and so it's hard for them to see that. Like, I think this is why publicly traded companies have employee stock purchase plans, because if their employees are investors, they are invested. And so we need to find a way, because this nonprofit isn't owned by anyone. And so now you've got this leader who is telling everybody that that it's all hands, and that everybody has to work overtime. And it's like, you're not even owner of this place. And so why are we listening to this? It's because we found out that we absolutely need something. And then there's going to be somebody who's like, this should have been brought up months ago. This could have been a part of our thing the whole time, but now it's coming up last minute. And I see a lot of that now. There's a lot of there's an urgency, but everybody doesn't share that urgency.
And then you have the wrong employees or the wrong employer.
Yeah.
And my argument is, and
it's figuring that out. Yeah.
I'm going to give you one. I have to be careful not to mention his name. Not that, I mean, it's a good story, don't get me wrong, but I was working for a nonprofit, and an employee, a long time, this is my family employee, who was in his 40s, said, why are the consultants making so much more than I am, and I'm doing more of the work? And I'm more of what this company, helping this company around. And without thinking, I made the mistake, because I was trying to come up with something. I said, well, then you need to leave and come back as a consultant. and I totally got what he was saying, and I thought he was right. And he did. The next week, he turned in his resignation. And 2 years later, he came back, and they had doubled his salary, because they knew how valuable he was. And they were able to do that. So my argument is that get your experience at these companies that have no money, and unless you see they're moving forward and upward, get the hell out of there and find the next job in a theater company that pays you better, and take that and keep moving.
I will say that what I do say at Exile, when I'm talking to our new staff.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be specific to Exile.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Because it's me now. But when I'm talking to our interns, I say the same thing. I say, our mission Our goal is to come in here and ensure that Exile is here tomorrow. So every day we're trying to figure out what we can do to move Exile forward, to put Exile on even
But
more solid footing.
but your interns can't give you insight because they haven't had the experience.
They're learning how and why we operate the way we do. So
Right.
this is why I'm telling them.
Okay.
And so I'm saying, so we come in here thinking about what we can do for the organization, not for the individual I report to, but for the organization. And so if you're not in that mindset of how do I do what I can do, bring my skills, my talent to this organization so it's here tomorrow, then perhaps you do have to ask yourself whether this is where you need to be or not.
Because well, it works both ways, and the organization needs to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm not saying that so I can just dump a lot of work on them. I'm saying this is what we're doing. I'm sitting in here every day saying, how do I make it easier for everyone to work here? How do I make it easier?
So let me now transition and ask, why shouldn't a show that is making $2.8 million a week on Broadway have contribute to a charitable fund that helps the nonprofits pay their people a little better?
Because,
for example, Othello, which is the highest grossing Broadway play in history because it has Denzel and Jake in it, and not because it's the best show anyone's ever seen, not because it's a new play that no one has ever seen. And my point earlier, when we were talking, that you could see free of charge with celebrities in the free Shakespeare in Central Park that Joe Papp produced for the New York Shakespeare Festival, that was open every summer and had Morgan Freeman and Meryl Streep, Kevin Kline, had all these major actors, and that was absolutely free. And now on Broadway, people are paying $921 a seat to see Othello, that they could see for free in Central Park, and this, depending on the year, or find somewhere else. So really, all they're really doing, let me be real curmudgeon here, Jake and Denzel could read the phone book. Oh, there are no phone books anymore. They could read a children's book.
They could read an ebook.
There you go.
Can you read this ebook off my phone?
So people are only going to, gasp at seeing the Two Stars live.
Win friends and influence people. Narrated by Jake Gyllenhaal.
and shouldn't that be part of the Broadway scheme? That if we're going to make that kind of money, I'm not talking about the shows that are floundering, but if you are making that kind of money, there should be a fund.
I think that is a great idea. I think the argument and the pushback is these are for-profit entities that are spun up to do this show, and the criticism, the justified criticism that we have for them is ethical. It's not required.
And you have a problem with that?
No, I don't. But the thing is, it becomes rhetorical because, are you going to guilt them because there is such demand?
No,
and
it's not
prices like that because there is demand.
But it's not necessarily guilt. I mean, even Hamilton contributes so much to the Broadway Cares. I mean, they all contribute to charities, so they do that already. So now the question is there a way for someone who is making a ton of money to help those floundering, since we're not going to get it from the government, and that the contributors that we all beg for money want only to see shows that they like?
I do kind of think after they break even, they should think about it more intently. I think that that's 100% justified. And we don't know what they're doing. Did Denzel and Jake need this money? No. I mean, are they getting paid, or are they paying or funding a foundation? With what they're getting paid for this. I don't know.
And there's no argument that they shouldn't get paid. I'm just saying, when you are at that level
Well, now it's the producers. It's not really about, well, they're producers
And they're
as well.
producers, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. The producers should see their opportunity, and I honestly think they should say we have a plan to break even. We can do that by whatever. I mean, honestly, the demand is because they're not going to be on this stage forever. And so, people are buying those tickets, so there's that. But yeah, if they were to break even, I would love to hear that they have done something with with with
And
some
I'm,
of this profit,
and I'm sure that I totally trust that the producers, because the producers, I know almost all of them, they all contribute. They
Mhm.
all want, they have the right spirit in them. So I don't doubt that they're giving to charity on
Yeah.
some level. My more thing is creating a new charity that helps all the other theaters.
Mhm.
That's my argument. Not trying to claim, oh, they're capitalists and we
I
shouldn't
mean,
allow them to make money.
and I know they wouldn't do this because they wouldn't know ahead. I mean, they knew in this casting it was going to do well because they've done well on Broadway already. But
Well,
but
we
you can't say like, we're just gonna put our whole balcony on a lottery system, and everybody who buys those tickets gets $40.
right, but the
$40 ticket.
lottery system means that people who are disabled, people who who don't know how to work the computers, people who can't do it every day, there are a lot of people that it's a struggle for. There's a procedure, and even that they're
Mhm.
all good.
Yeah.
Let me start with, yes, all of this is good.
Mhm.
All right, I'm
But
just
yeah, those things are things to think about too.
right.
And this is why, like, I would argue, devil's advocate, saying like, isn't this a justification for doing nothing? Because you're not going to satisfy all parties, however you do something.
Right.
Because, like, yeah, on the one hand, it does seem like an effort to make it more accessible to people of various financial backgrounds, is to offer a lottery system. However, you're right. It's everybody can't walk up to the box office to do that. Everybody doesn't have a Today Tix membership, you know, or account, or like, it's just not as easy. But
Nor
I would say the same
nor
thing.
nor can they go to the show at the day that they get it,
I would
because
say the same thing for Shakespeare and Clark Park. I mean, not Clark Park. I'm sorry. I'm here in Philadelphia. Shakespeare in the Park, through the Public Theater, because nobody can get those tickets, and that is a lottery system.
well, you can stand online, but it's a smaller number. It has changed
If
for the
you're out of town, you can't
for
get
the
those tickets.
worse. It has
Yeah.
changed for the worse, especially since so many of their tickets go to high-paying donors.
I mean, so is the problem demand? Like, is it's not that people aren't coming to the theater, it's that they're being hit with everyone's promotion, and something might be winning for them that isn't us. Like, perhaps they made a decision to go do something before they even heard about us, and it was like, oh no, I don't have a ton of options. Like, what if you're somebody who has a very slim budget, and you're like, I only have enough to go to dinner and a show once a month, and so they planned it. It's already planned out, and then they can't do anything else. Perhaps it's just that the prices have gone up on everything, and it is just not easy for people to consider
And
coming
that
to the
brings us
theater anymore.
right back to our original discussion.
Yeah.
Is that is perhaps the most legitimate reason why everyone's having trouble getting an audience.
Hmm.
Because even if you can bring the ticket price down to a movie, I know people who aren't going to the movies
Yeah.
because they have to feed their children.
Yeah.
So they can, and plus streaming services, which used to be a bargain. Now, if you're really streaming all these services, you're paying as much as a theater ticket,
Hmm.
right? And so therefore you get 1,000 choices, right? So you stay at home, you have your kids there, the entire family can watch the same show for the price of one ticket. Why would you go out and have to buy 4 tickets or 5 tickets?
Yeah.
right?
And unless and unless the artist in the film's contract is that they get a percentage of the box office, they've been paid already, or at least their contracts have been sorted out already. But
Hmm.
like there is sort of like a guilt trip when you come to a theater. It's just like these 7 actors are working their asses off here and they need all these tickets sold. They need all these seats filled because, we want to pay them
Right,
adequately.
right,
And so I feel like that's the tough part. We're in this mindset of asking because we're a nonprofit. So we reach for into the community to find other people who believe in us. And it's tough. Like I feel like I would love for every theater to have some sort of revenue stream that allows them to be less dependent on on the asks, because the asks feel desperate. It's like you're producing great work. You've always produced great work, but now you're financially struggling, and so it feels desperate, and it's
and
desperate for everyone.
most people
Tough.
don't see it, and this is something we learned during the pandemic. Most people don't see it as essential,
Yeah.
because if you have a choice of eggs
Hmm.
or going to the theater, you're going to choose
I'm going to
eggs.
the theater. I don't need to be. Let's see, be gassy with eggs or be elated with wonderful theater. I
Now,
know this is it.
ju-
Yeah,
but just imagine if the theater you're going to served eggs
it's called
along with the show.
it's called An Excellent Journey. It's a children's
Oh,
theater piece.
mhm.
There's an ugly duckling in it. It's cool. It's writing itself. Hey,
Yeah,
listeners, are you into this excellent journey about an ugly duckling and a bunch of rotten eggs?
yeah. You listen to the
Come,
silence.
come find us in
Yeah,
Emery Production. You could do that. So, okay, listen. Yes, we are constantly trying to figure out how to get people into the theater. It's not a bribe. It's that we really have something great here, and we're just not getting everyone's attention for a myriad of reasons. But I guarantee you will notice a difference if these theaters close. You will notice a difference if the arts start to dwindle. And it's so important because it feels like right now there's a direct attack on the arts community. And
yeah. Dude,
so
I do not. I think
I'm not.
you are so right. We are not getting complacent, but we so much is happening so fast. We are looking for the right way to respond, and when
Mhm.
money is involved and somebody else holds the purse strings,
Yeah.
we feel helpless or powerless. And not that, look, plenty of theater companies have already closed during the pandemic. They're not coming back. So it's not like a theater can't close. The
Hmm.
question is, for those of us who already love theater, pick and choose somebody to support.
Yeah.
But not arbitrarily. It's not like, oh, give everyone $10
Hmm.
when some theater companies aren't doing anything special.
Yeah.
Ask your and if you can, if you have the time, if you're an actor, if you're a designer, talk to your producers and your theater companies about what are you doing beyond putting this show on to help the community. And maybe the community will respond,
Yeah.
maybe, and give you something back.
Hmm.
And right now we're there for each other. And that's my argument, that we just have to say everyone else is welcome, but we are here for each other.
So before you get that ticket to Othello, think about whether there is a arts organization in your neighborhood that produces Shakespeare, and maybe give them a try first.
It's
But
not funny, it's a good idea.
no, it is absolutely, because if one organization is producing Othello, there are 3 others producing Othello. So,
And
because
the
that
truth
tends to
is,
be how it happens.
just as somebody, you and I, Darnell, are very lucky. We get to work with some celebrities, just working with them. Therefore, it may not mean as much to us to see one of them live,
Hmm.
but I the idea that just walking into a theater to see George Clooney, who is the other one making a lot of money
Mhm.
on Broadway. I don't wish them ill because they're theater and it's
Yeah.
wonderful. So we want them. We want them in as much theater as they can give us. But the money has got to be shared, and we have to develop new work.
Yeah.
So you have to balance it. For $921, maybe buy a $700 ticket and give $100 to Theater Exile.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because it's a great time to be in exile. Let me tell you a quick story before we say that's the business. Was it last week? A couple weeks ago, I was in New York and I was at the Drama Bookshop, and I'm walking up to the counter with four books to buy, and I walk past the cafe, and Lin-Manuel Miranda is standing right in front of the cafe, just standing there, regular guy, t-shirt, pants, Lin-Manuel Miranda. I walk by him and I say, "Hello, how are you?" That was it. He said hello. He said I'm good. It was so weird because the moment, like, I could have had more of a conversation with him, but I feel like this is like a safe space. All these people in here know who he is, I think. And I just didn't want to accost him. But because Mitch pointed out how we do work with celebrities, and they are people just like us. And I think that's why I just said just this common hello. But of course I walked away and I was like, there's tons of things I would have said to him. I could have been like, I just interviewed Angel Segala, who was in New York, and he is a Philadelphian and we love him very much. I could have said, I love the soundtrack for the Warriors. I love what you guys are doing, and I can't wait to see where it goes. I could have said anything, and I just said, hello, how are you? But I didn't throw away my shot. I at least said hello. And one day, Lin-Manuel Miranda and I will be friends.
And that's
the business. I could have told him I was a podcast host.
and that's the opportunity you missed. Would he have been our guest?
Could have been. I don't know. I'll just keep adding. I'll just keep adding him and see what happens. Anyway, Lin-Manuel Miranda, if you're listening to the podcast, thank you. I was being respectful.
You got to leave these people alone, Darnell.
Absolutely, I did. He was just right there, and so I said hello. That was it, and I went right to the register and bought too many books. Will I read them all?
Well, and see what happened. You you contributed to a multimillionaire because he owns the bookstore.
Yeah, but the bookstore is just it's a very important part of our community.
No question.
Yeah, and that's why I support.
But you see, he saved it.
Yes, he did.
And that's what my suggestion is to the producers of these hit shows on Broadway. Mm-hmm. Help save theater across the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? They have the money after they break even, after everyone's paid back their investment. Just a little bit, contribute to a fund.
Yeah.
And let's not qualify like the NEA does. You have to fill out 14 pages and prove what you did last year and how much money you're making and who's getting paid what. And then we have to question you. No, just give everybody a little bit of money, help them through the day.
Yeah. And that's the business of theater, a working title. I'm Darnell Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And we will see you at the theater.
Toodles.
All right, fun chat. Two topics, and we ran over time.
I knew it was going to go over. I knew
That's good, though.